The war had a way of turning men into ghosts long before they died. We moved in silent, three-man patrols through what was left of the city. A concrete graveyard where the only sounds were the hollow echo of our own steps and the shuffling feet of the enemy. We kayit dem Risen, because the word zombie fell too easy. Much like a cheap horror movie. The Risen were anything but cheap. They were the casualties of a different kind of war. Men who had traded their lives for a hollow, unending existence. My name is Miller. Sargante Miller. I've seen things that would make a sane man scream, but the worst of it wasn't the chaos. It was the quiet moments, when you looked into their vacant eyes and saw the ghosts of men you once knew. Our mission that day was simple. Clear a supply route through Sector 7. The sector was a nightmare, littered with the husks of burnt-out tanks and the bodies of soldiers who had fallen in the initial chaos. As we moved past a half-collapsed hospital, we saw them. A patrol of Risen, 5 of them, moving in a grim, methodical line. They wore the faded, tattered uniforms of our own forces, their helmets askew, their rifles still slung over their shoulders. 3 rounds. Steady fire, whispered Jensen. My point, man. He raised his rifle, his face a mask of cold professionalism. We'd been told to see them as targets, not men. It was the only way to survive. But as my gaze fell on the 3rd one in the line, I froze. He was a young kid, maybe 20, with a shock of blonde hair peeking out from under his helmet. His face was a grayish-green, his jaw hanging loose, but something about the way he walked was different. Lissus tumble, more a hesitant shuffle, like he was lost in a fog. Sergeant, Jensen muttered, his finger on the trigger. Wait, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Something was wrong. This wasn't just another Risen. He turned his head slowly, and for a terrifying, heart-stopping moment, his dead eyes seemed to look directly at me. I saw no hunger, no rage, just ... confusion. And then my eyes dropped to his chest. His uniform was torn, but his dog tags were still there. They glinted in the weak sunlight, and the name on them was clear, even from a distance. Davies. My heart hammered against my ribs. Private Davies. I had served with him. He was the one who always talked about his little sister, the one who carried a worn photograph of his high school graduation tucked into his vest. I remember him asking me once, Sergeant, do you ever think we'll be able to tell our kids about this? Miller, what are you doing? Jensen's voice was tense. The Risen, Davies, began to move towards me, but not with a lurching charge. It was a slow, pathetic drag of his feet, like a little boy coming home after a long, weary day. The other Risen followed behind him, a lifeless herd. I dropped my rifle. The clatter on the concrete made Jensen flinch, but I didn't care. Davies, I yelled, my voice raw. Private Davies. The Risen stopped dead in its tracks. All 5 of them. They stood there, motionless, their vacant eyes fixed on me. And then the kid, Davies, raised his head slowly. The mouth twitched, and a faint, raspy sound emerged. Not a roar, but something that sounded like a question. Sergeant. It wasn't a word. It was a dying echo of a memory, of a life that was already gone. A flicker of recognition passed over those dead eyes, and for a fleeting, heartbreaking second, I saw not a monster, but the frightened boy who had once asked about telling war stories to his kids. He didn't want to fight. He just wanted to be remembered. I took the small American flag from my puck, the one we carried for the fallen, and walked toward him. It's over, soldier, I said, my voice breaking. Go home. I knelt before him and gently, carefully, placed the flag over his helmet. I wasn't just covering a Risen. I was giving a man his final. Oberdwe Saluth. The other Risen stood watching, silent and still. For the first time, I saw them not as enemies, but as the final, most tragic victims of a war that had never really ended. Jensen and my other squad mate Rodriguez stood frozen, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. But they didn't shoot. They just watched as I honored a comrade who had lost his body and his soul to a war that had promised him glory and given him only endless walking. The war didn't just kill these men. It stole their very humanity and left behind a grotesque monument to its cost. The real enemy wasn't the walking dead. It was the conflict that created them. I never saw the risen as just it again. I saw them for what they truly were. The forgotten ghosts of war, waiting for someone to finally call them by their name.